Hello and welcome back to another update in the Israeli-Palestinian war, where there's been a significant development in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, and that is a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza City. We see that the whole of Gaza City is now back into Hamas hands. We see that the Israeli forces have left a few snipers in the city to establish guerrilla war against Hamas fighters left within the city, but the main parts of the Israeli army has completely withdrawn from the city. This means that the Israeli forces never managed to fully take control of the city. Instead, before they fully took control over the city, they withdrew and has left the city back into Hamas' hands. Their claim is that they have completely destroyed Hamas in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, but the fact that they have left some snipers and continue airstrikes in the northern parts shows that that is not the case. It simply shows that the attrition they were suffering from having their whole army within the city was too much, so now they're leaving their special forces, their best trained units within the city to continue conducting operations and continue a guerrilla war within the city. This, however, will likely not succeed, as the Palestinian forces, the Hamas fighters, still have the local population on their side, and one of the rules that was written by the United States after the experience with urban war over the past 2 decades was whoever has the local population on their side will have information on their side, and therefore if any civilian spots an Israeli soldier, they will tell Hamas where they are, and the Hamas fighters will be able to ambush them. So we're seeing that the Israeli forces are now in a very difficult situation, as they have not completed their goals in the north of the Gaza Strip, yet they have withdrawn from most of it, including all of the city and most of the Jabaliyah area, as well as the Beit Hanun area and Beit Lahia areas. So we're seeing that there's only this small presence in the northern outskirts as well as in the central parts, but there's no significant presence anywhere in the Gaza city. So this can be called a victory for Hamas and a failure for the Israelis. However, this war has not been lost by the Israelis. Instead, we're seeing that there's continuous heavy fighting in the central parts of the Gaza Strip and also in the Khan Yunis area. Here we're seeing that the purpose of the Israeli invasion from the very start wasn't really to free the hostages, but instead to destroy the Hamas leadership. We've seen that through these almost 100 days of fighting between the two sides, that many Hamas leaders have been killed, mainly from the military branch, but also from the political branch. However, so far, Hamas has not nearly been destroyed. Hamas fighters in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip and central parts of the Gaza Strip had been left largely untouched in the first 2 months. Here in the third month, the main focus has switched from Gaza City to the southern parts, now completely. So we're seeing that the Israeli forces are now focusing in the southern and central parts, and this is likely because they found out that the main parts of Hamas, the political and the military parts, were not located in Gaza City, but instead here in the south, likely in Khan Yunis, where we're seeing a lot of fighting, and we see that the Jarara area here in the northeast of Khan Yunis has been encircled but not captured. This likely indicates that the Hamas fighters have 2 locations here in the Khan Yunis direction, both in the Jarara area here to the northeast of Khan Yunis and the southwestern parts, because the northeastern parts of Khan Yunis was quickly and easily captured by the Israeli forces. Although they managed to enter and take control of these areas, they do not fully control it. There's a lot of guerrilla fighting taking place within it, but the southwestern parts has largely been left untouched, being heavily bombarded by Israeli forces. But they also, before entering the northeastern parts, told the civilian population to get out of it, move away, evacuate it to the western parts and the southern parts in the Rafah area, where in the Rafah area there is said to today house 1.3 million Palestinians in such a small area. So most of the civilians in the Gaza Strip have left for Rafah, but this also meant that the northeastern parts of Khan Yunis were largely left without civilians, while the southwestern parts have a lot of civilians. So we're saying that the fighting taking place in the northeastern parts is largely between the Israeli army and Hamas fighters, as the Israeli army attempts to gain full control over the area and push the Jarara area here in the northeast, while at the same time we're seeing that there's continuous fighting in the central parts. So the exact state of the war is not known to the general public. It is only known by Hamas officials and Israeli officials. But at the same time, we see that almost after 100 days, we see that the fighting continues. Hamas still has a significant presence throughout the Gaza Strip, both in the northern parts and in the southern parts. Yet the Israeli forces continue this war, which it has gone down a bit. It has reduced a bit, despite having 300,000 troops for the Gaza Strip, which outnumbers the Hamas fighters almost 10 to 1. They have been unable to win this war in 100 days, and our fighting still continues with no success for the official goals of the Israeli forces. The official goals were, first off, to completely destroy Hamas, which has not happened yet, and the second goal was to free all of the hostages. They've freed all of the civilians, but all the soldiers have not been freed yet, and as such we see that there's this continuous fighting where the Israelis have not achieved any of their goals, and as such so far the Israeli forces cannot withdraw, they cannot end this war and call it a victory because the official goals have not been met. So what exactly is currently happening? What is the goal of the Israeli army, and how are the Hamas fighters responding to that? First off, in the northern parts, it seems that the Israeli forces are trying to do and achieve two things. The first one is that through the fighting that they have gone through, they want to keep this connection between the north and the east in the surface cut off. As such, the only connection is the tunnels between the two sides, and they want to continue pressuring the Hamas positions all throughout the urban areas, and they want to locate and get rid of the Hamas leaders and locate and free the Israeli soldiers who have been taken hostage. This, however, all takes place in the tunnels, and the Israeli forces, so far there's been no evidence of them entering the tunnels, but instead fighting on the surface. As such, we see that the main attempt to destroy these tunnels by the Israeli forces has been through bunker buster airstrikes, and as such there's been no clear evidence as to how far they've gone through with that. Most of the surface fighting is taking place between Hamas fighters and Israeli soldiers, which so far has shown that Hamas fighters go in and out of these tunnels fairly quickly. They go up, locate an enemy, go and call for reinforcements, they all shoot, and then they go back down. The faster they are, the less casualties they take. While the Israeli forces try to establish positions where they can ambush Hamas fighters as soon as they go onto the surface. So they're trying to improve the strategy as time goes by. But so far it has shown, based on the footage that we've seen most of the footage from Hamas fighters, not a lot from Israel. The Israeli footage is mainly just them walking around, driving around the cities and bombarding destroyed buildings and airstrikes all over the place. But there's been no face-to-face head-on contact footage. Therefore, we're not really clear how well it is going for them, and only taking one side is biased. But at the same time, we have to take what we have, and based on the footage we have, the Palestinian fighters tend to just go out of the tunnels, hit someone, and then go back down. And based on that, we can see that their method of fighting is very effective. The question is this the best trained, best equipped soldiers that we're seeing doing this, who are very experienced going in and out of these tunnels, doing these quick hit and run tactics? We're clearly only seeing the times where they succeed, because no one would show publicly the times where they fail. But at the same time, if the Israeli official claim, which is that 9,000 of the casualties were Hamas fighters, then that shows that only a third of the official numbers of Hamas fighters have been taken down in 100 days. That is far from what was expected. Only a third of the Hamas fighters in 100 days is way below what was expected of Israel. That is to say that during this fighting, anyone would expect that Israel would attempt to just go in and out, and with all of this destruction, we're seeing heavy bombardment everywhere, we'd expect that Israel would try to do this as quickly as possible. Yet after 100 days, they have taken down a third, according to their own numbers, a third of the Hamas fighters. That is beside, if Hamas mobilized, then there would be even more Hamas fighters than what was detected prior to the war. At the same time, there's even talks of escalation between Israel and Lebanon against Hezbollah. And in that case, they would just extend the war with no official goals taken. Therefore, this shows that Israel is not really in a good position right now. They would either need to negotiate and call off their claims to completely destroy Hamas, because after 100 days they've only managed to destroy a third of Hamas. So their goal clearly right now is to attempt to get rid of the head of Hamas, try to destroy the political and military leadership of Hamas, and then call it a victory there. Otherwise, they would be forced to negotiate and just take back the soldiers that were taken hostage by the Hamas fighters, and then call it a half victory where they managed to free the hostages, but at the same time they failed to kill Hamas. Or they'll just completely escalate the war to fight Hezbollah as well, and then end in a endless war against guerrilla fighters both to the north and to the southwest, where they'll continue taking casualties until eventually it's just a war that they can't win. They're fighting against Muslims, and Muslims are known to be very tenacious fighters, as we've seen in Afghanistan. We have seen it everywhere in all Muslim countries. It's simply a fight that they can't win. And that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.